Morning. So today we are going to bake a sourdough loaf and we're going to use Larry to do it. So let's get started. First, as per my previous video, and there's Larry. As you can see, hopefully, he is thriving. In fact, he's overflowing. I'm going to have to clean that. So I emptied some out last night, about 14 hours ago. Let him stand to warm up to room temperature because he's been in the fridge, and then I fed him about 10 hours ago, and he's doing rather well. So let's get started. I've got a dog here that's joining the party, but let's see how we can do without tripping over him. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a recipe that is based on James Morton's recipe that I've adapted to fit my needs. And we will use some water that's been sat for about an hour and a half on the windowsill, because again we're letting the chlorine evaporate. And what we'll do is we'll let's put him to one side a moment. We'll start the mix. So what we need is sourdough starter, flour. In this case I'm using two variants of the same brand of flour, we've talked about that before, and salt. I happen to use low sodium salt because I like to keep my cardiovascular system in a fit state, but you can use whatever you like. So what we'll do is we will start with 275 millilitres of water, or 275 grams, same. 1 milliliter of water is 1 gram, if you didn't know that. I just find it easy to weigh. If you're going to bake out of a loaf tin, straight on a baking stone for example, I'll drop that to 250 grams because it's quite a wet dough and it just ends up quite flat if you do that. But I'm going to do it in a loaf tin, so 275 grams it is. Now the original recipe puts the flour, salt and starter in first and then puts the water in afterwards, but I've developed this a little bit from a pizza based recipe that dictates that your sourdough starter should float if it's ready. So what we're going to do, that's 275 grams of water, and we put 200 grams of sourdough starter in. Don't know if I can do this. Hang on, let's see if I can show you. I don't know if it'll work, but your sourdough starter should float, and it's floating. Look at that, brilliant. So, and it's nice and runny, so it's pouring nicely. Just keep going until I've got 200 grams in there, but it's floating lovely. And what we do is we blend this with the water so that it doesn't leave any cloggy bits in your dough later. I talked about it briefly in the sourdough starter video, but this is seeing it in action. And if you blend it with water with a whisk, it means you don't get any horrible clumps. Well, in theory, I do occasionally get them. Right. So that's just a little over 200, because what happens is when you whisk it, you lose a bit of the mix on the whisk, and I like to make sure I've got plenty to make the dough rise. So just move that out of the way. Hopefully you can see that. Just whisk it in. Again, the original recipe doesn't do the whisk, but I find this gives me a better result. And it blends in the sourdough starter into a nice liquid. Also gives it a bit of a kick up the backside to wake it up. Not that it really needs waking up based on his current state, but Larry is doing exceptionally well. Better than I thought he would be at this stage, to be fair. So that's him all mixed up, nice and frothy. Yeah, and we only lost about 1 gram there, which is quite good. Sort that out later. And then what we're doing is we're adding the flour. So the original recipe is all white, and you can do all white. You can do white and rye, that's quite nice. But what I do is white and wholemeal, and it ends up as a 50-50 loaf. So we put 250 grams of wholemeal flour. This is very strong bread flour again. So 250 grams in there. Let's see what we can get out. Oh, just a little over. I'm a bit of a stickler for measurements, so I like to get it as close to my standards as I like. And then, so total flour should weigh 400 grams. So whatever you choose, pick a combination that works for you. I'd suggest the first time you're doing it, do it pure white, because it'll give you a better result and get you off to a good start. But add up to 400 grams, so that's another 150 grams of white. Bearing in mind you've got effectively 100 grams of white in there with the sourdough starter already, so that gives you a 50-50 loaf. But I quite like it as it comes out like a wholemeal, which is very nice. Well, I think it is anyway. Hopefully you do too. There we go. So that's 400 grams in there. I will probably post the recipe for this as well underneath if people want it. And then you need salt, and that's just 10 grams of salt. Again, I'm using low sodium salt, but you can use whatever. As long as it's a fine grain, don't use big flakes because it doesn't blend in very well. And what the salt does two things. First of all, it gives it flavour, which is always good in something you're eating. And the other thing is it retains water in the dough. And for a sourdough, it's very important to retain that moisture. We might talk about that a little bit more later when we put it in the tin. So we've now got our dodgy mix. Get yourself a nice wooden spoon, or plastic if you prefer. I like these Japanese hardwood lacquered spoons, which my wife bought me, which are brilliant, kind of hard, but a little small. But anyway, give it a good mix. Just make sure it all blends in nicely. Takes you a little while just to get going. And this is quite a wet dough, so don't worry, it is wet. As I say, if you're not baking in a tin, probably put a little less water in, maybe 25 grams less, something like that. Helps it stand up better. In the tin doesn't matter because it will just fill the tin accordingly, which is fine, and we'll see that later hopefully. I'm really hopeful for this one because of how Larry has been overnight. So that's the mix. I am nearly there. Hopefully you can see it's all very rustic and splodgy. There's a technical term in case you didn't know. Here we go. That's the mix, and what will happen now is we will let it stand for half an hour, cover it up. You can put a clingfilm over it, damp tea towel, or you can use a cloth cap, a bit like for the sourdough starter, but much bigger. That's for a proving basket really, but it fits over my mixing bowl nicely. So I'm just making sure I haven't got any dry bits in there. It's all mixed in nicely. And what we'll do after that, we'll put that cap on. Let me just scrape a bit of this. Don't stress the small stuff on here, but don't be wasteful either. So I just like to get a little bit off the spoon, just so I maximise how much dough I've got and get the best out of your loaf. So yeah, we'll put that cap on and leave him for half an hour, after which we will knead him, and we'll feed Larry while we're at it, and he's going back in the fridge. I'll be back later to show you the kneading. See you later. Okay, so we've sat for 30 minutes, half an hour. Dough is starting to form. That half an hour is just to let the dough settle in, get the sourdough started, start to let a bit of gluten form, and just get it in a fit state. So what we're going to do now is knead. You can do this with a stand mixer on about half speed, for about 5 to 10 minutes. You want to do it until it passes the window pane test. I don't use the window pane test, I do it until I feel right. But I also do it by hand. However, my hands are arthritic and shaky, as you can probably see, so I use a flexible dough scraper. And it comes with a hard dough scraper as well. It's a little bit expensive, this one, but you can get a cheaper version. But you want a rubbery one that kind of flexes a little bit for this. But again, use your hands if you're not bothered about getting your hands mucky and you don't have the same problem as me. But what I do is I use this scraper and I do effectively the motion that would be done by the stand mixer. So I'm going to probably just do this for about 10 minutes. Let me put the timer on. And we'll probably speed this bit up so it's not as dull as sitting there watching me do this for 10 minutes. But yeah, try and get all the bits out, scrape them round, and keep the dough moving for about 10 minutes until it starts to look a bit smoother and clean. Cue fast action. Okay, so that's the 10 minutes of kneading done. As you can see, the dough is a little bit smoother and it's holding together quite nicely. So what we're going to do is cover it up and leave it for 6 hours. Reasonably warm room, 20, 23, something like that. Not too warm, hopefully. No drafts. And we'll see you later for the second proof. Okay, so we've had 6 hours of proving. First proof, so let's see what it looks like. Looks like it's developed quite nicely, it's good. Let me just get something. Flexible scraper. What I meant to say earlier on, I completely forgot, is you can leave that in the fridge overnight and do the next stage in the morning. You can also do the next stage and then leave that in the fridge overnight. And one of the advantages of doing that is it develops flavour. So some people go up to 36 hours leaving this, but I'm a 12-hour person really. So yeah, let's see what we can do with this and put it in a nice shape for a tin. So first of all, we have tin. A tin with a lid I prefer, and gives the best results for me. I think this is a 450 gram tin, which is probably slightly undersized, but my sourdough doesn't generally rise much more than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to grease it. This stuff's really good. You can use olive oil in a kitchen roll and just rub it out with this, just to spray it. If it'll work, that's a new one. So I'll just put a bit on the lid so it doesn't stick. If it rises that much, we're quite hopeful that it sticks to the lid. So I'm going to do that. Put the tin aside for 1 minute, and we're just going to get a bit of flour and dust the work surface as we're going on. And the shaping will happen now, ready for the next proof, which gives you the nice loaf shape. So just give that a good dusting over. You can use any flour for this, it doesn't have to be the expensive stuff. Plain flour, cheapo, nasty if you like, but I just use what I've got, which is the same stuff as I used for the loaf, for the dough. So I'm just going to ease out the dough onto the work surface. This chopping board has antibacterial stuff impregnated into it, so it only takes a little bit of cleaning. It's quite good like that. It's a little bit sticky, this. Okay. So yeah, there's a little bit left on the bowl edge. And I said before, don't sweat the small stuff, but I like to make sure I've used as much as possible. A little bit of dusting on the top so it doesn't stick to your fingers. And then what I do is a couple of stretches, but you've got to be kind of light with this because sourdough is quite delicate and you don't want to destroy the good work that's happened over those 6 hours. So gently just stretch it, and I fold over that way, fold over that way, turn it sideways and do the same again. And this just gives you a nice shape to prove in the tin. Fold over, don't be too firm on the patting, and then watch, this is a quick trip, flip it over and fold under at the same time, and then you're just trying to shape it into a loaf shape. You can do the same thing for baking outside the tin, but I prefer a round if I'm doing that, and you'd use a proving basket. So I put that straight in. Proving basket would be done at this point as well. Let me see what a proving basket shows. Yeah, there's your proving basket. We might do another recipe with that, and I'll show you how to deal with it. If you use one of these, make sure you condition it properly first, because it just sticks if you don't. So anyway, so that's the dough in the tin. Put the lid on, and that can sit in the same place as before. Again, try to avoid drafts, and in a reasonably warm temperature. I think it's about 20 degrees in here at the moment, and we'll leave that for 4 hours, and we'll see you later. As I say, you could put that in the fridge overnight. So if you got to the point where you've run out of time, put it in the fridge overnight, take it out in the morning and bake it first thing. You can have it for breakfast. The only thing I'll say is let it get up to room temperature first before you do anything, and that's probably about an hour. So yeah, that's an option if you want to do that. I'll see you later. Okay, so the dough has been in second proof in the tin with the lid on. So look, it's not risen as much as I would have hoped, but we're nearly at the top. Sometimes I can't open the lid because it's risen so much, but that's okay. So what we're going to do is we've got the oven on. It's on 245 degrees. It's been on for 35 minutes with the baking stone in. Yeah, you just need to get everything nice and hot. We're not going to bake at that temperature, we just want to get it started. So baking stone in. If you haven't got a baking stone, and that's the baking stone there. If you haven't got one of those, you can use a oven tray, just anything that can retain some heat underneath your loaf when you put it in. I'm just going to put a tray of water in at the bottom,
and this builds up the steam inside. I'm going to drop the temperature to 210 thereabouts, and I'm going to put that in. So I'm going to put it in for 25 minutes. Oh, it's not going to work very well. Yeah, 25 minutes with the lid on and the water in, and then I'm going to take the water out, take the lid off, and another 25 minutes. And what the lid does, and what the water does, it keeps, well, the water's going to steam, keeps the moisture into the tin, and it keeps the moisture on the top, and it allows the rise of the dough to happen without crusting over. When you take the lid off and take the water away, the crust then forms and the rise stops. So that's the plan. So I'll see you again in 50 minutes in total. I'll show you when it's finished and it comes out the oven. See you later. Okay, so the loaf is out of the oven. Let's have a look. It's a little bit toasty on the top, and it's not quite risen as much as I normally get. Usually get quite a flat top because it goes right to the top. So I'm assuming there's some bubbles under there, but it's not bad. It's not terrible. It'd be edible. So we'll try and get it out. A little bit banging. Let it slide out. Put that on the cooling rack. Let's have a look at him a bit more. He looks good. Bottom's all merged up properly. Let's just give it a tap. Nice hollow sound. That's what we're looking for. So it's been baked through. We do have some bubbles at the top, so maybe when I cut it there'll be some gaps, probably around there. But I'm generally happy, given it was quite a young sourdough starter. Yeah, it worked. So there you have it. I'll put that in a rack, cover it over and let it cool overnight, and I'll slice it in the morning. I won't bother adding the slicing bit, you know how to do that. But there's your loaf. Thanks for watching.